Hey everybody, welcome to Geeksvana Live. It's really great to see you all here again. Also, we had our surprise impromptu live stream. I don't know why I did jazz hands then, but there we go. I'm doing a lot with my hands today, but we're not going to go down that route. But yes, welcome. Thank you for joining us 2 nights in a row. Really excited about the show this evening, actually. Tonight, we're going to be talking to our guest, Chris Lawrence, about a subject that I wanted to talk about for a very long time, and it's been finding people to talk to on air about this kind of thing as well. So I'm very happy to say that we're at that point this evening, which is where drones meet manned aviation. And as someone who works as an air traffic controller, Chris understands the topic, and this evening he has been kind enough to share his knowledge with us. Chris is actually a Geeksvana viewer and is our air traffic controller moderator. That's the title I've given him. But he's a mod in our chat and is often willing to impart the knowledge he has, which I love. Anyone in aviation that has knowledge and is willing to just sit and talk to people. He also posts often and answers people's questions on Facebook and that type of thing. Very much like our senior editor Graham does as well. Spends a lot of time, many hours on Facebook. I think they're very brave for even being on the platform, frankly. But that's enough about my love for Facebook. But yes, it's wonderful when people actually want to do that. Please keep in mind, though, that Chris is obviously here to share his knowledge. He's not representing any company or organization. We're not sort of holding him up. This isn't a courtroom. We're not going to be having him cross-examined to see if he is a subject matter expert. He is a chap experienced within this field. And as I say, I'm very, very excited to be bringing him in. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you're here in the live chat today, please do hit that like button nice and early, because it does help the stream get recommended out to even more people. And if you're watching the replay, hit the like button as well, because it will help us there on the algorithm. So without further ado, let's bring our guests and co-hosts in. Hi, guys. How are you? How are you, Graham?
I want it. Sorry. I want it. Sorry. I can't resist doing the jazz.
You had to do the jazz hands.
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Thank
you. There's actually some other hands that I'm showing to you just out of camera. Can you guess what they are? I don't know if my general gesticulation is giving you any kind of. And of course, we're also joined by Chris. Chris, hi. Thank you for being brave enough to come on camera and chat with us.
No problem. Happy to help. No problem. Happy to help.
And also in the background we have Will, the producer, or producer Will, as we. It didn't feel right calling you Will, the producer. Will.
Hang on.
Will,
yeah, there's got to be some rules and regulations producer Will at all times.
Rules and regulations, yes. Oh yes. Apologies for the echo there, people. I've just fixed that. There was actually a slight echo on our audio side, but that's now been fixed. But yes, but Will, welcome. Thank you. You're here to keep us in line and hopefully move us along into the different sections, etc. But I'm really looking forward to this one. So Chris, could you first of all explain to everybody who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah. Eleven, 12 years, previous to Aberdeen for 3 years. And also a drone hobbyist. Only been about a year coming up now, actually, that I've owned a drone. Wanted one for years. Fingering many other pies, hobbyist-wise, do a bit of music production, as you can see here.
Just guitar, a bit, yes.
Astronomy, photography, you name it. Not enough hours in the day, not enough money, but yeah, that's pretty much
excellent. So as I say, I really do appreciate you coming on and having a chat with us, because it's one of those things where I feel like as well, it's great to have you here because obviously you have to work this in the real world. So your application of this is 110% real world. Rather than YouTubers like myself who sort of read this is what an ATC is supposed to do with a flight request and blah 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 blah. You actually have that real world experience. So I really do appreciate you coming along. Now, Graham, apart from your dazzling shirt, you've got a very interesting looking background there. What's going on?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody will recognise the airport from that image, but it's Gatwick, and that aircraft was taxiing, and there were aircraft taking off. It was all live, and just behind my head, if I just move to one side, what's that?
Is that an Inspire 2?
So it is an Inspire 2. It was one of 2 we had in the air, and obviously Chris with full ATC permissions. So it's possible. it's possible to fly drones at Gatwick within a couple of 100 meters of a live runway if you have the permissions, if you've done the risk assessment and gone all through the right steps.
Indeed,
So,
indeed.
yeah.
And, we're not here to necessarily say, hey, hang on a minute, it's easy to fly and crack on. You must only fly in an FRZ with the correct authorities in place, written permission in place, and you'll know if you've got written permission because you'll get the telephone number of the air traffic control, etc., for the day where it's happening and that type of thing. So you will know because you will have a lot of information about what you have to do before you fly, basically. So could you explain to us initially what an FRZ actually is, Chris?
So FRZ is an area of airspace which the CAA and various airports, I am assuming, have decided that we would very much like to know about any drones that are operating in here. It's not necessarily you cannot fly here. It's very much we would like to know where you are, what your intentions are. And a phrase we use often in air traffic is I've completely forgotten now. A non-traffic environment. So we'd like to create a non-traffic environment.
Yes. Okay.
So that we know a drone 500 meters away from a runway, if we don't know about it, is stop operations time. Airport's closed. If we do know about it, it's barely a hindrance to us. We'd carry on.
And that's the dramatic difference within that zone, isn't it? It's literally, can we carry on and operate or can't we? And it isn't as well because often you then start to get the sort of the feedback and the feeling of it's just a 250 gram drone. What possible could it cause, etc., etc. We're not even going to get down that road this evening about what a small drone could do to an aircraft, that type of thing. But it doesn't even come down to that. This isn't a judgment call from air traffic control saying, actually that it's only a Mini 3, we'll let them off. It is the rules that you have to abide by and the safety margins that you have to bring into play, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even so much an air traffic control decision. It's very much an airport operator decision. We are merely the kind of coal-face workers that are dealing with the deconfliction at the end of the day. All your drone requests come through us, but they go to the airport operator. As we always say, it's their train set. We're just allowed to play with it. Some airports, it's the same company that does their own in-house air traffic. At Edinburgh, we're contractors, so it's ultimately the airport's decision. And yeah, they've got rules and regs. And yeah, they could let a 250 gram drone fly without willy-nilly, but at the end of the day, if something does happen, it's the first question that's going to be asked is why did you let
yes exactly and
is it fair to say, Chris, that actually flying within an FRZ can be one of the safest environments, providing the airport knows and provide air traffic control know, because you know what's going on. You can essentially deconflict by saying, don't fly there, don't fly above this height. Whereas outside that, in Class G, for instance, yeah.
Okay. So, and obviously, flight restriction zones are something which we see on our apps and our maps, etc. And they are specifically for drone users, of course. It's not something that manned aviation need to look out for, because if they're in that zone, then they've probably already got permission to be landing, etc. But you then do have that larger zone outside it, which is the CTR, but is the controlled area. Did I get it right this time? Control zone. Okay. I always put it. Oh no, it's control region. I normally call it, isn't it? Which you've pointed out in my videos before.
I'd never heard of this control traffic region until I started flying drones. Never heard of it. 15 years almost in air traffic, and I'm like, where's this come from? I don't know.
What are these guys even talking about? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's a control zone. The easy way to remember it is a zone always starts from the ground. If it doesn't start from the ground, it's an area. Control zone, control area.
Excellent. And the CTR that we see, the larger red circle that we see on apps like Drone Assist and Drone Scene and the Altitude Angel main app and those types of things, that's basically mainly for manned aviation.
Again, that's going back to the known traffic environment, but that's for manned aviation. So that's where we vector aircraft for instrument landing systems. That's where aircraft do their initial climbs to get up to the airway systems. It's just basically protecting those aircraft from bandit country. Anybody in their dog out flying Cessnas outside and microlights and whatnot.
So if someone's flying in that region, they will be in radio contact with you at the tower, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's required. Yes, they need to be.
And the aerodrome, the FRZs are made up of the aerodrome zone area and the runway protection zone, isn't it?
I think officially it's called, the circle's the FRZ and then runway protection zones. The FRZ just happens to have exactly the same dimensions as what we previously called an ATZ, which is an aerodrome traffic zone. Somebody's obviously said at some point during the discussion, well, why don't we just make it the same size as that? And some said, yeah, that works. So yeah, it's exactly the same size. It's a separate thing.
Excellent. Okay.
But it's important to know that there can be ATZs, aerodrome traffic zones, which are not FRZs.
Yes, there's frequently smaller airports outside as well. They might not have controlled airspace, so no CTR at all. And they will have an ATZ there, which is designed to give a little bit of protection for aircraft operating. And Graham knows all about operating in them, don't you, Graham? Temporary wins as well.
Yes, and dodging helicopters. So if I want to now, we quite rightly on this channel and any media that talks about drone flight here in the UK, we always heavily try to get across the message that to stay away from flight restriction zones with your drone. So we kind of create an atmosphere of, you know, sort of manned aviation saying, "Grr, drones, we don't want you anywhere near us," type thing. But you can of course get permission to fly within them. It's a fairly, absolutely. And as I found on many of them, it's actually a fairly simple process. As you say, it depends on how an airport runs it. One of the questions I actually wanted to ask you actually was on the Drone Assist app. When you press on an FRZ, it shows the aerodrome that controls that owns that, and it gives you telephone numbers on the side. One of which is air traffic control. Is that how we should start that? Should we go to the Google and go to the website and read up how they deal with it, or should we just pick up the phone?
This is the massive grey area, isn't it? Because there's no right or wrong answer to this, and it changes depending on the airport. Most of the big airports in the UK are, especially the NATS ones, you go to the NATS NSF portal to get permission initially. Our one, it's on the Edinburgh Airport website. They've got a form that you fill in. I think if you phoned the number in Drone Assist, they would just point you towards that form. I've found the best method is, just Google the airport name. Leeds, Bradford, drones, and usually the first result is some kind of online portal there to fill in a form or whatnot. But yeah, for most of the big airports, it's NATS NSF portal.
And there are, of course, there is a checklist which most airports will run through, and depending on the size, depending on where they are and what's around them, will include, you know, even checks on security and that type of thing, and to see what's in the area and what you're actually doing, what the flight's for. So it's good to have all that information ready. You be prepared to give over quite a lot of detail, including the serial number of your controller, which is actually the active signal that you can then pick up, isn't it? The signal you can see when it turns on.
I mean, I do have, let me pull up, I have an example of one of our requests here, which has got all the information in it. So we have operator name, contact number, the pilot if it's different from the operator, what category you're operating in, A1, A2, A3, GVC, location, lat and long if you can give it from a map, maximum height, line of sight, if you're FPV or not. I know the Edinburgh Airport one actually gives you a map that you can click on. Yeah, that pretty much covers most of it.
That's very cool. I like the idea of there actually being a map that you can actually show and identify, and it obviously takes the hotspot.
Other places have got that. Like I said, many airports are very different. Edinburgh's got the map you can click on. I've never went through the NATS NSF portal one to see if that's got something similar. Being NATS, they're usually quite good with their tech stuff, so I'd imagine so.
It does.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's quite detailed, but you know, just the information you'd be expected to know. It's quite cool that they're asking about FRZ, whether you're flying FRZ. That's what that tells them, I'm not sure, but perhaps, you know, reduced height.
And then this is the form you get back, usually a couple of days. The form I'm looking at, it's even got the risk assessment that they put in it, so low, medium, high risk. You get a permission reference number, which is the one that you quote when you phone up on the day. as a reminder, you must phone up on the day, despite getting this back. This is a permission as well. I might add as well that if you don't know what day you're going to be doing this, you can put a range of dates in. So in this summer, you can go between July or August or whatever. You put a range of dates in, and that permission will then stand for that whole length of time. You just have to phone up on the day before you take off, after you take off. And then there's some stipulations in here which sound obvious, but you maybe don't think of as the immediate cessation of flying from ATC's part, that they will phone you, set phrase, this is Edinburgh ATC, drone stop. I say again, drone stop, for if we need you to stop immediately. Tells you what they expect you to do with that, which is to stop and land as soon as you can. And the other way around as well, if you lose control of your drone and it's flying towards the airport, you must contact the airport straight away,
of course,
as soon as possible, saying this is such and such, fly away. I say again, fly away. Drone last seen heading your direction, and estimated duration minutes of your battery.
Excellent. Okay, so it's good to obviously have that, be prepared to have that, because that's also an important one as well, because of course some people will put their phone on airplane mode just before they start to fly, so they don't get notifications or interruptions. So of course these days it's not actually to hand, but these days we have the RC controller with the built-in screen, and a lot of people fly with tablets as well. But do bear in mind, if you are using your phone to fly, to keep it with a signal running so that ATC can call you, and obviously if they're calling you asking your little drone to come down, then it's serious, so you should absolutely be available. And also, as you were saying, it's kind of like, for me, when I look at it, I see the initial email that comes in saying yes, you can fly on that day or one of the chosen days as the permission, so that's the written permission. But then the phone call on the day is actually getting essentially the clearance, isn't it? It's the same as any aircraft on that's holding off runway to say, hey, I'm in my slot. I'd now like to take off, please. And then it's
I mean, there's traffic. It's a dynamic thing. It's a dynamic situation. Things change from hour to hour, from minute to minute. I mean, we've got a folder. I looked at it today actually just to find this form that I could pull out, and there's like 30 or 40 active drone permissions in there just now.
Wow.
So as a controller, we know nothing about them. That's an admin thing. So that's the assistant and the admin
which
stuff.
makes complete sense.
I'm not interested until it's actually going to be there.
Exactly.
And if I'm sat on radar or in the tower, I'll get a message from the assistant saying, there's the form. This guy's going up now at such and such a place. And we'll put a little display information so that everybody knows that it's there. And
indeed. So yes, and then of course you get the clearance, and I think on some of them, I think at Gatwick they asked me to. They ask you to call when you're clearing the site, so actually they know that you've landed safely, everything's okay, and you're gone, and they can kind of take you off the board essentially.
Many people don't, because I've sometimes been sat at 1 o'clock in the morning in the tower, and there's still been an information strip saying there's a drone flying at Ratho, and it's been there since 10 in the morning. Like, is he still there? Really?
That's not helpful, is it? Really, that's not helpful. When would you clear that? Would that be the following day or something, or?
I would just usually clear it in the middle of the night.
At 2 a.m. they're probably not flying anymore. Yeah, that's just a nerdy thing. I was just interested as to why they would when they would do that. So, but so if you do have one, 100% make sure you call to say that you've cleared the site, because then they can tick you off the list of because again, you know, this isn't a damn drone coming in your FRZ. This is another airspace user that you as a professional are helping to safely fly in that airspace, and everyone's welcome, aren't they? Essentially, everyone with permission in that zone.
I mean, we treat them the same as everybody else. We've got our airliners, which is our bread and butter. That's what's making us the money. But we've also got microlights who come in Edinburgh. They come in to see the bridges. Everybody wants to see the Forth bridges, so they come and fly past every day. Cessna's flight training, so people out in PPL training lessons. We've got paragliders at the Pentland Hills, parachuting, all sorts. We get the military coming in, practicing to invade some small island in the middle of the Forth River somewhere. And
sounds like fun.
We welcome it. We like the variety.
Yeah, so no, exactly.
A lot of difference to the clear to land for takeoff, clear to land here for takeoff, airliner stuff. Yeah, we like
which is actually one of the reasons why both myself and Graham we like you a lot personally, because of how open you are and with your information and your focus on helping to educate everybody as well. I think that's a fantastic thing. Yeah. Anyone that works within the aviation side of things that has that attitude is fantastic. But I have to say, it's more unusual for me to come across a professional within the aviation industry that isn't like that, actually, that isn't very passionate about keeping airspace as open as possible.
The drone thing's funny, actually. I think me as a drone user, I'm kind of more on the side of it. A lot of controllers, I think, have got concern for drones, and I think it's somewhat warranted. I mean, going back to the other users there, the private pilot's license, they're licensed. They do exactly what they're told every single time. They're always following the rules. Likewise with the paragliders, likewise with other airspace users. And I'm sorry to say there's a few drone users who just seem to be ruining it for everybody else. It's a cliche phrase. But yeah, I mean, we're lucky if we go a fortnight now without getting somebody flying in the FRZ without permission.
Really?
And we know you're there, right? We've got the technology, we know you're there. We know it's drone, it's not balloons, but yeah, at least once a fortnight, I think, over the summer especially, there's been at least one a fortnight. Some have been caught by police, some haven't. But it's the whole hobby down, and I think every other airspace user, we know that they're following the rules. We know 99% sure that they're going to do exactly what they're told, whereas the drones currently are a bit of an unknown quantity. 99% of them are perfect. We get loads of phone calls, like you said, asking permission. There's just those odd one or two that, cliched phrase, ruin it for everybody else. But I mean, it's early days for the hobby, isn't it? So
it is, and I think as well, when you have a level of aviation like drones, consumer drones, where actually your entry level is so low, you can literally, you know, we have the Danny at Argos joke on the channel at the moment, and
I was going to mention Danny, actually.
Poor old Danny. And you know, so actually, it isn't very difficult for a layperson to get hold of a drone and take off in an FRZ and arguably not know they're doing something wrong, which of course is no defense. And you know, whereas obviously someone that's usually, you know, you'd hope a commercial pilot and other forms of aviation will be very much used to being within the regulatory framework and being very and understanding both for their career and their license and everything else, but also for safety, why they need to do all of that. So you kind of have a clashing of two worlds as well. And there is, of course, always that streak of it almost feels like a rebellious streak on the drone side of things as well. But I completely agree. It doesn't help anybody at all.
You know, a little bit of that's what you touched on. The pilots are having to renew every year. They're having to pass a license every year. They're having to pass a medical every year. A lot of other guys are having to do the same. And if I'm honest, can you really blame some of the drone operators? Because the information out there, it's as clear as mud just now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Really? I was corrected by somebody last week. I was adamant that you could not fly a drone in a danger area. Turns out you can, actually. But then if you look at the list in the AIP, it mentions all these danger areas. Obviously, it's for the protection of your drone in a danger area. There's things in here that could hurt you and your drone, not the other way around, which is what a restricted area would usually cover. But if you go to the map view for these danger areas, there's some of them with asterisks next to them. And this relates to there being bylaws that prevent entry to some areas of this danger area. That's not mentioned in the list.
That's right, yeah.
Somebody's expected to know that that's in the chart. And so what chance do people have, really? I've got a lot of confidence in Drone Assist. I know they're aiming to try and get that to be clearer, to make airspace restrictions clear. I mean, the obvious one's the specific area. Is it that what it's called? Specific area?
Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah.
The specified area.
Specified area.
Sitting there, red, bold as brass, along with all the rest of the restrictions, but it bears no resemblance. You can ignore it as far as drones are concerned. So why is it there?
Well, exactly, and there's also the wishy-washy wording with Drone Assist as well of the it could be prohibited or advised against to fly here and that type of thing. And I'm hoping they change that. I know when I brought this up with them in one of our meetings, which was actually planning our shows around the launch of the new app, it was actually discussed in terms of that it's kind of hangover wording from the days, because of course the app was originally developed on behalf of NATS by Altitude Angel, and it's still got a lot of hangover from that point of view. So there, but again, with the SSSI update and other updates happening, I think we should start to see some accelerated changes. But I thought to myself earlier on, because I've put a post on the community tab. One of the viewers raised that the drone scene came up as in conversation in comments, and I thought, I haven't even looked at that software or flight map for a very long time. And so I put it in our community tab. Which apps do you use? Do I need to refresh what apps I'm using? And it kind of struck me after putting that up and starting to see people's reactions. There's nothing there from the CAA. No one's saying, "Oh, I read X from release from the CAA or Y," and if we didn't have these apps, which are independently developed, where would we be? We wouldn't have a quick
relying on the DJI maps.
Well, that would be scary.
It still boggles my brain how, going back to little Danny from Argos, if you don't know the rules, you don't know where to look, you're not looking up. They're relying on this DJI map to say where you can and can't fly. Oh, there's a 500-meter altitude zone. That means I can fly up to 499 meters here. That's how anybody would take it, surely, unless they're looking. So what chance do people stand?
There is an official NATS map of the flight restriction zones.
Yes,
but of course that's useful and looks very similar to Drone Assist, because it's essentially the same data set. But it does contain some oddities as well.
It does,
and also it's web-based. On it as well, for starters. It's web-based, and it's not. Therefore, that is
it's not, but it's also because I like the NATS map, because you can overlay it onto your phone's Google map, so you can actually have it naturally. You can be driving down the road and going, "Oh, I'm in an FRZ," which will be quite interesting when you're on sat nav. It can tell you that as well. But it doesn't have what I like about Drone Assist is the preemption of NOTAMs and things like that are on there, whereas of course the NATS one tends to be the live data, isn't it? So it's it would be nice. I think I've heard a few people quote it as, it would be nice to have a one clear truth map that is 100%, that we can all just hang our hats on and say, follow this and you'll probably be okay. Well, of course, we know from recent court action that you cannot rely on an app alone, but anyway. But before we move on to the next segment, thank you very much, Amok Time Flies, for your £2 super chat to help out Andy Cortez roaming charge. Yes, Andy Cortez, our senior moderator, is still watching from his holiday and costing himself huge amounts of money on roaming charges. And I think I'm wondering about just how drunk he will be at the end of the stream. He'll probably be going live on his channel to show us all, no doubt, which is what used to happen when he lived in Guernsey for a short amount of time. He would go live straight after my lives, and we'd see how drunk he was. But there we go. And that's one of our channel moderators. So there you go. So up next, I wanted to talk a little bit about airspace incursions. I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but there we go. And talk about what happens in the situations which you started to talk about before, in terms of spotting a drone or the drone thing coming up. What would happen if I called the tower as a member of the public, whoever, and said, actually, I can see a drone flying close to the airport? How does ATC handle that kind of call?
Honestly, we would phone ops at the airfield, and that's their decision to make. At Edinburgh, I don't think we've ever had a member of the public phone in a report. Any of the drone incidents we've had at Edinburgh have been directly due to our anti-drone systems picking them up. I can't remember at all getting a member of the public report, but like I said, we're very much the coal-face workers. It wouldn't even be me that would take the call, it'd be the assistant sat next to me, and they wouldn't even tell me. They would just phone the airport ops and say we've had a report. It'd be up to them.
I would
like to think that a single report wouldn't.
Okay.
Would we do anything for a single report? Would maybe advise the aircraft that are there that something had been reported.
Okay, that's interesting. So the decision making side of things is, as you were saying, it's a airport ops type thing. So whoever the airport manager is on that day will say, okay, yeah, I think we're gonna close the runways, etc. And then obviously you guys, as the contracted ATC, will run to their.
I mean, whether that's different in other airports, they may well work completely differently, especially the ones that have got their in-house ATC, where they're all kind of one team. They might delegate that function to ATC. I mean, at Edinburgh, it's very much out of our hands. I mean, we don't even have real access to the anti-drone mapped defence thing that's over in airfield ops as well. We steer well clear. We just enact what happens.
Okay, that's interesting. So the which I suppose it makes sense for it to be over with them as well, because they're the ones making the decision. Yeah. So essentially, the way you as ATC in your setup would find out that you are going to be closing runways or warning pilots, that type of thing, would be you would get the call from ops to say that they've seen a drone on their counter drone technology.
So we use the colour code Edinburgh. I don't. Other places maybe use other things. We red, amber, and green drone alert. Green means it's unknown, it's an FRZ, but it's not causing an issue just now. So we may tell the pilots there's been a drone spotted such and such a mile south of the runway. Are you happy to continue? Most of them say yes. The amber's something that's maybe moving towards us, or it's maybe off the departures end of the runway, so we may have to stop departures.
Okay.
Landers, fine. Or opposite way around, we have to stop landing traffic, but departures can still go. And red is pretty much over the airfield, and we've got to stop everything.
Okay, so where the drone is flying, that type of thing, is also important from the point of view that the ops are obviously assessing the risk essentially to the aircraft, aren't they? Really, they're assessing.
It's a constant risk assessment.
Which again makes complete sense. Is there ever any value in confirming a sighting of a drone in person, or is it mainly based on the tech? I mean, obviously the tech is going to be fairly reliable because it's showing a DJI controller active, and then they can see the drone. Yeah. So it's going to be. Is there anything?
It's not going to be baked.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very protective of their anti-drone system. They're not allowed to talk about it too much and how it functions and how it performs. But yeah, you can find as much on the manufacturers' websites as I think you can safely bet that if you're in the FRZ, we know you're there. We know if you've got a DJI drone. I don't know if it picks up other ones, but yeah, we know you're there. Member of the public, if they phoned in, it would be confirmation, I suppose.
Okay.
But it's a hard thing to judge, isn't it? If you get a report from a member of the public saying there's a drone here and our system saying there isn't, then...
Yeah, no, exactly, because it's always been something that I've always wondered about, because to me, if you've got working, good, effective counter-drone technology, then it's giving you exactly what your radar's giving you for the aircraft. It's a really reliable data. Whereas obviously, if I was stood, and I've been around aviation for many years, I'm experienced drone flyer, etc. But I still probably couldn't tell you whether that Mini 3 is over my neighbour's house or over the next street away sometimes, and that sort of depth of perception and the perception of someone on the ground. I suppose the data of having the technology, and that, of course, I suppose that's where the value of the technology is you get very, very precise readings of exactly where the person is from the controller, and also, of course, where the drone itself is flying.
I mean, we've had incidents with I don't wish to call them NIMBYs, but anti-aviation members of the public who phone up and swear blind that they had planes flying over their house, and you look on the weather recording, they're like 5 miles away. So yeah, perception from the ground it's very skewed, especially when you're not used to looking at aircraft. I mean, pilots are very good at it. They've been doing it for decades. We take pilot reports of drones more seriously, and I've been in many arguments on Facebook. I like a good argument on Facebook. See your local drone group for examples of my work. And there's people swear blind. There's no way a pilot can see a drone at the speed they're going. I've seen cockpit videos, and they're quite clear sometimes. And these guys are masters at looking out the window and spotting things. They're doing it every day. And are some of them wrong? Yeah, probably. They're human at the end of the day. But I think we take them more seriously than just a member of the public. Yeah,
indeed. And it's an interesting debate, because again, I've spoken to pilots who are flying, a Cessna. Or a couple of my friends are also private jet pilots as well, and they've seen drones come very, very close to their aircraft and on landing and that type of thing. They're not entirely sure whether or not with their depth of view, etc., whether they were close enough to be a problem, but they're still going to report it so that everyone knows it's there. It's then when you get to the slightly more incredulous side, when you hear of a sort of a 737 pilot seeing a drone at 10,000 feet or something.
But yeah, you do kind of worry about it. But then I don't know. You get a lot of people on Facebook who moan about this and say they're trying to kill the drones, trying to do this. I think the bottom line is it's all about risk and consequences. And in aviation, yeah, the risk of a drone hitting something might be very small, might be minute. The risk of a drone causing damage to something might be minute, but the consequences could be massive. So the airport can't just sit and do nothing. They've got to be seen to be doing something about it.
Yeah, that's it. And I always say the same with EMS helicopters and things, that if an air ambulance spots your drone flying, they have to deconflict the airspace. It's not down to the pilot to decide, actually, will that Mini 3 hurt my helicopter? That isn't a way to fly safely. That isn't a way. That isn't safe aviation.
I mean, it's not even just about collisions and damage. It's, if we know there's a drone in the area, the pilots are looking for it. Takeoff and landing is the busiest, highest workload in the cockpit for both pilots. They're working like one-armed paper hangers in there, trying to do checklists and whatnot, and they're always having to look out the window for a drone. It's just adding to that workload as well, which can cause, it's when incidents happen, is when you're overloaded. And same for us as well. If we haven't to change the way we're working, or the runway's closed for a certain, that all backs up. The traffic's holding and holds, and traffic's waiting on the ground, and we're having to organise diversions to other airfields. So we're on the phone, we're trying to get weather for other airfields. It builds the workload up, and that can have a knock-on effect for the rest of the day, just by being closed half an hour.
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
There's always a big drive in aviation, isn't it, to reduce workload and just reduce the stress on the individual concerned.
Quite rightly, frankly.
There's a lot of stuff done in human factors and psychology and whatnot, and the busier you are, the more likely you are to make mistakes. It's obvious, isn't it?
So you were saying that you have experienced unknown drones being flown within the FRZ. That it isn't a rare occurrence to happen.
Not rare. I can think of 3 or 4 in the last since the start of the summer. There's been 3 or 4. Yeah, that can think of, and that's ones when I've been either in or I've heard about it from an oncoming watch or a watch of the previous day. There's probably been other ones in between when I've been on my days off that I've not heard about. But yeah, I think where Edinburgh is as well, is we've got the Royal Highland Showground right next to us. There's one recently there, so I'm just flying over the Royal Highland Showground because that's kick off next week. There's various hotels, have weddings and stuff, so guests like to get a photo of whatnot. And yeah, it happens more than the media will report it. Definitely.
Okay. Now, it wouldn't be right without me if we had somebody on who works in ATC to not bring up the infamous word of that is Gatwick, and to really get your sort of personal opinion as someone that works within the industry. Obviously, it's a very large topic within the world of drones. Is it as large a topic? Is it as large a debate in the world of ATC?
No, I don't think anybody's really ever mentioned it. I think a lot of people just assume it's kind of been overblown a little bit by the media.
Just a bit.
I've no inside information at all. I mean, I have tried to get some, but I'm in the dark as well.
Yes, there seems to be a very good sort of Official Secrets Act NDA signature sort of circle around that event, which seems to be.
You've got to assume that Gatwick had anti-UAV technology.
I think there's an element of it that I look at, that you have to look back and remember that this was the first major incident of this type of thing happening. Especially, let's for a minute assume what they were saying, the media narrative is correct, and somebody was deliberately flying drones to shut the airport down. That's going to be one of the first times that's happened in the world, and I think now, especially even listening to how you deal with things and with the traffic light system, etc., that probably wouldn't necessarily have happened in the same way. And actually they probably could have opened runways a lot sooner, etc., to the point where actually with the Heathrow pause people that in 2019 I actually interviewed their leader the day before he was arrested. Actually, they were going to fly drones within the FRZ of Heathrow deliberately to try and close the airport. But actually, it was long enough after Gatwick, and there were enough tech in place and enough reactions with the local police units, etc., that they could actually deal with it without actually hindering a single flight. So I think, to me, a lot of it is to do with we're trying to put modern day tech and how we might handle it now and judge it back then. But I don't know whether they had the tech, because that's actually been one of the arguments as to whether the tech was in a cupboard.
That's one of the questions.
Yeah, was actually they had it, but it wasn't plugged in.
I mean, how long was it closed for? Was it 30 minutes? Is that right?
I think it was overnight, wasn't it? Wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, it was over. It was over a 2-day period, I believe. Yeah. It was the 9th.
And they had a period in the middle there where they opened it for a very short amount, and then they closed it again.
They closed again on the 21st. I know this because I was at a wedding within the. Actually, it wasn't within the FRZ. That was when the FRZ extended to about a kilometre or half a kilometre away from the boundary. I had a flight just outside for a wedding, and I was spent my morning on the phone to Surrey Police because it was actually in Surrey, and then West Sussex Police contacted me and said, "You will not fly. If you fly, we will take your drone out of the air." And I said, "You do that, it might fall on some wedding guests, and then you'll have caused an incident, an accident." And there were threats and all sorts. In the end, I backed down, but I have got 2 nice apologies in writing from the police commissioner and the constable. So
which again shows how and I honestly think there were obviously lots of mistakes that happened then, but I think that it would be dealt with very differently now, and we would probably get a very different reaction to it. But I certainly wouldn't have liked to have been the people on duty that night, bless them. I think it would be very stressful.
They did have the alert a couple of weeks ago, didn't they? And that was essentially something and nothing. What was it? The balloons? Don't know, probably. But whatever it was dealt with in a far less hysterical way. There are a couple of
and the true cause came out quite quickly as well, didn't it? That it was balloons, etc., which I know was partly from social media, but yeah, which is obviously a very positive thing. Okay, Will, I think we have some. Do we have some questions that we wanted to?
Yeah, have you got the run order open on your monitor? Yeah, if you just scroll to the bottom, I've popped a few questions in there for you. But yeah, we've got quite a few.
This is a very good one actually, which is and this has come up on a few of my videos recently where I've been getting the same question about different topics, and it sounds like a really basic, simple one, but I'd like it to be on record and on air. But do the same rules apply in terms of FRZs for all drones around airports? What about my 249 gram drone? What's the answer there? I think it's an obvious one.
Yes, it applies to all drones. It's in the CA website. Anything that's got a camera or isn't a toy and above is a blanket.
Yes.
It's a blanket.
And it's worth realizing that the sub 250s, they're not the outlaw drones, they're not the rule beaters. Essentially all it's really doing is actually where you can fly in terms of other people and congested areas and that type of thing. That's where the freedoms from sub 250 comes. In terms of airspace, you're with everybody else basically. There is no difference.
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to it's not so much how much damage a drone could cause if it hit an aircraft. It's more the disruption it causes, having to look for it, and if it did bounce off an aircraft cockpit, the distraction and whatnot. So that it can be any size that'll cause that kind of
absolutely. KD Drones has asked, how can we stop ATC charging for airspace access? Well, the first thing I would say is to defend Chris is it's not ATC charging for airspace access. It would be the airport. So, and however they deal with it. And I know that again, this is a controversial, it can be a controversial topic because you have some airports like East Midlands that charge, I think, is £150, whether or not they're going to give you permission. And obviously others have no charge at all. Am I right in thinking you're allowed to, you can't charge for airspace access, but you're allowed to charge a reasonable admin fee, and that's where the argument is that right?
I honestly do not know. I mean, I know we charge airliners for access to controlled airspace. We charge airliners for landings and takeoffs. The drone thing, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a case of similar to what airports do with their duty free, isn't it? They're trying to make their money.
Exactly.
They don't think they make very much off the actual airplanes flying around. I think they make most of their money with their duty free, and it seems like it's another tax, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Really? I probably don't agree with it, but hey, what can
and
you do?
if you feel KD drones are actually something's happening that shouldn't be happening, there is a page on the CAA website where you can actually submit an airspace access complaint, and they will actually genuinely look into it and come back to you and tell you whether or not what is happening should be happening, and give you a more formal answer as well, basically. So it's just...
if I can interrupt you there, Sean, I've just got coming through from me from Aviation House. Actually, that prints out onto a piece of paper, which then drops into a shredder.
Now.
It's probably not far from it.
I think at the very least it goes to an email account which is ignored. At the very least, but I would love that. Something in me would actually love that to be happening. It gets printed and straight into the shredder. But yes, indeed.
But there's a very hamster lives in the little bin underneath. So you know.
I think at the end of the day, if a business has got an avenue for making money and nobody's stopping them, or
if there isn't a regulation stopping them, etc., and that type of thing, then yeah. I mean, and that's where I think it's possibly just the way that we look at air travel and that type of thing as well. We forget the amount of businesses that are involved in an average airport, and actually, of course, to keep these things operational, COVID and the pandemic has shown us how fragile aviation can be, especially for smaller airports. And some are still recovering, and many didn't recover. And even airports that have reopened, etc., they're not operating in the way they were pre-pandemic at all. And there's a big industry, a lot of jobs keeping us safe out there as well.
It was a famous interview question I had back when I first applied for NATS many moons ago, and it was what does NATS do? And you come out with the usual spiel about, oh, they're really good at this, they're really good at that, yeah, but what's their purpose? And you're like, oh, well, they do this and they do that. But the right answer is they're there to make money. I mean, the NSL side of it is obviously the en route side as a government thing, but the airport side of it, they're there to make money.
Absolutely.
That's the primary purpose of any business.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Will, were there any questions that came in from Instagram?
That one you've just covered.
Oh, okay.
About that, we actually put a stories up earlier today and had that come in through that, which was quite nice. Johnny DRC is I thought it was a good one there. Can you pick up other drones than DJI ones, like home built ELRS? I thought that was a good one.
Well, I think Chris was saying that he wasn't sure about other drones and that type of thing, and I think also it starts to get to the point of not wanting to disclose as well.
Yeah, I mean, the airport's very protective of that system. We've actually had an email saying, do not discuss what the system can do. And I think that boils back to the terrorism thing.
Yeah, and anything for security, isn't it?
Website that just show DJI drones, I've not seen our system show anything else. I've not seen footage of it showing anything else. So I don't know.
Indeed, and
of course, different airports will have different systems.
Multiple systems, and
there are systems out there with very good capabilities.
Yes, and also bear in mind that sometimes it isn't just the airport checking out what's going on, because you can also have police units. There could be other reasons why counter tech is being deployed near airports as well. And I've seen tech that can pick up anything. In operation, some stuff that actually scares me, frankly, of just how accurate it is and just how far away 20-25 miles these things can stretch out, which is incredible. So actually, people that do live sort of within sort of 20 miles of an airport that do their little 600-foot flights thinking no one can see, actually there's probably somebody can see. They're just not worried about you because you're nowhere near their airport, basically. So Amok Time Flies is asking, I may have misheard, but do you need a GVC to be able to get authorization to fly in an FRZ?
No.
Yeah.
That's just one of the questions. They ask what category you're going to be flying in. So they'll ask if you're going to be A1, you're going to be A2, you're going to be A3, you're going to be GVC.
Indeed. Yeah, because again, it's good information for them, isn't it? As well as much information as possible is good.
Can I be honest? I don't even know what GVC is.
Well, GVC is the next one. So you have your A2 CFC, don't you? And GVC is essentially the next one up. It's the General Visual Line of Sight Certificate, but it gives you permission to fly in the specific category. And then once you've passed that and done the flight assessment and passed that, you can apply for an operational authorization and get what used to be called the PIFCO. and what used to be the commercial permission, etc., but now is just allowing you to fly heavier drones in congested areas and
That's
that
very
type of
much
thing.
going into Graham territory. I'm
Oh
just
yeah, no, you're very much in Graham's specific territory. There's a specific category joke for you. There you go. So it isn't actually based on because in fact I know that from the point of view that I actually didn't give any of those details when I got permission within the Gatwick FRZ, because actually the auto UTM thing I was using on the Drone Assist app didn't ask for any of that stuff. So I was, as far as they were concerned, I was just a guy flying a Mini 2 for fun in a park. And I got permission very, very quickly, actually, and that flight's on the channel. You can watch that flight where I zoom my camera in to show the aircraft taking off and landing on the runway. I felt like a proper boss that day, I have to say. It was great fun. So yes.
I'm assuming that the which category you're flying in question just gets pumped into some algorithm which decides on the risk assessment.
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. If somebody is a pure hobbyist flying for fun and they're asking to take off the other side of the fence, then that might be reviewed. But yeah, I know these things go through a good checklist, as it were. So, but excellent. Okay, well that's the questions, and that's my questions. Graham, did you have anything else you wanted to raise or anything else you wanted to chat with Chris about?
No. I mean, on that last point, if despite holding a GVC and operational authorization, I would apply according to the flight I was doing. So if I was out in the countryside and there are airports that are more than 150 meters away from where you might be flying in an area that's more than 150 meters away, and or so could even be a large drone, but I count a lot of what used to be Puffco flights because they were commercial flights. If they're in an open area, I'll do them under open category. So yeah, I'd just say open A3.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Okay, well, Chris, thank you so much. Not only for coming on this evening, but for being our ATC moderator in our live chat, and the information you already give the audience is fantastic. And thank you for also being one of the Facebook warriors, which I mean in a nice way, along with Graham, who's so willing to get the information out there.
I must interrupt you, actually. I probably should put out an apology. I'm definitely on the spectrum a little bit, as many controllers are. And I'm like a dog with a bone in an argument. I like a good Facebook argument, and I range from the use of ND filters to restricting zones, and I'm like a dog with a bone. So anybody that gets on the wrong side of an argument with me, I apologise in advance, and for any historical ones.
It's great. It's great because the first time we ever had any sort of dealings with each other was a good old row on the UAV hubble.
Yeah.
About CTZs, as I recall.
Anything else, I think these days, it can be a good argument.
Yeah. Good.
Well, as I say, thank you again for coming along this evening. I really do appreciate it. It's great that we've got some fantastic viewers and people around the channel like yourself, because it really does add a lot of depth to the conversations that we can have, frankly. And it's good just to again, I feel like it humanizes every part of aviation. We're starting to meet people even in ATC now, etc. And it's showing it's not just some a paragraph about FRZs on a CAA website. There's human beings behind it all, etc. And we're all just trying to share the airspace in as safe a way as possible, and have fun with our drones, frankly. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Anytime.
Excellent.
You.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much. Will, thank you in the background there for keeping things running. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, been having fun in the chat.
Did I just wake you up? No. Okay. Oh, you've been in the chat.
No,
yeah. And we will obviously see you all next time. Later this week, we've got the interview coming up with the MPCC. There'll be a couple of clips of that coming up, and then you'll be able to access the full interview as well, which is really interesting. And I will have a lower airspace, the future of the lower airspace update from the CAA coming up probably Thursday evening. Might be Friday, but probably Thursday. Which is going to be a very interesting one, actually. So we've just brought you the sort of, it's not as glitzy as the FAA half-hour video that we put out, showing all these sort of dramatic Danny in a park reconstructions, etc. It's actually like a 10-page PDF, but it does have a lot of very good information. So I'm looking forward to running through it.
I think you'd be very unfair there. I think they've done very well with the crayons, and they didn't go over the lines
And there
once.
isn't one single photo showing a drone hovering outside
A drone next.
a commercial airliner. So I think they should be congratulated for that as well. I'm just being sarcastic at CAA this week. I do apologize. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it, and we will see you next time on Geeksvana. Bye bye.